What's up, guys? My name is Just Jen. That's me. And I am a recovering heroin addict. So if you are easily triggered or offended by graphic content or language, exit stage left. Like I said, my name is Jennifer, and I'm a recovering heroin addict. My date of sobriety was November 1st, 2014. That was a day that I'll never forget. I just celebrated 2,400 days of sobriety a couple weeks ago. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So I'm going to break this up into installments, and I'm going to take you back where I was, what I did for my drugs, what it took from me, what it took for me to quit and say, I'm done. And then I'm going to share my message of hope and share with you guys where I'm at today. And we're going to do this thing. And hopefully I help more than one person. You guys may know me from my Falling in Reverse videos, my music reaction videos. That is where I first disclosed the ugly truth that I also battled with substance abuse issues in my past. I related to the music Ronnie Radke and Falling in Reverse. I related to Tom McDonald with Mad Child and Nova Rockefeller when they did Sober. I divulged some very ugly truths there. The video Sober by Tom McDonald. The messages that I received from subscribers, people that just watch the videos even, the emails, the countless of emails that I've got praising me for helping them. I see it all the time. And it warms my heart because sharing my story not only gives people inspiration, but it also exposes my ugly past that will keep me sick if I don't divulge it. And I need to use this platform that I have. I have a voice and it needs to be heard. I have a story and it needs to be told. So I'm going to take you way back today. This is the first installment of my recovery series. My name is Just Jen, and here we go. So, the beginning. It didn't just start with marijuana, right? When I was about 4 to 5 years old, I started sipping the foam off my grandfather's beer. He would be gracious enough. He was an immigrant from Germany. That was my dad's side. My mother's side, Italian. I came from a good home. Unfortunately, my mother and father divorced when I was 4. So I come from a broken home as well. But my mother did the best she could. She really did. She is an amazing mother. I'm still blessed to have her today. She's my rock. So I started drinking alcohol, the foam off my grandfather's beer. I'd pour it for him, and I'd drink the foam. He would let me. And also, I would start drinking more and more. And the family thought it was funny, and they would all giggle and laugh. And, I found myself wanting more, right? So now that I look back on it, I didn't even remember that until recently. But now that I look back on it, I had this insatiable hunger for substances that took me out of myself, out of my body, out of the feelings that I had, the sadness that I had from coming from a broken home. 5 years old, I was traumatized. I was victimized. A neighbor, 2 doors down, he was a serial sex offender, and he even raped his own stepdaughter from the time she was in the crib. He used his 16-year-old son to groom me because if I didn't tell, that was his in, and boy, did he use that. He exploited the hell out of me not telling. I was scared. I was told it was my fault. So I was shamed not to tell. Long story short, I divulged 3 years later after I heard my mother and grandmother talking about it. If you're a victim, please speak out. It's probably the best thing that you can do. Unfortunately, he wasn't convicted based off of victimizing me. Because I didn't tell, he victimized another family, a brother and a sister it's so crazy because it happened in another city. And my mother married my stepfather when I was 8 years old. So we had moved to that city. And I don't know if he was stalking my mother still or not, but he had offended there in the city that we moved to and ended up victimizing a brother and a sister. So I carried that guilt with me for a very long time, because when they put me in front of male detectives, I stopped. I clammed up. They should have put me with female detectives. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Long story short, he was convicted because of that, and my testimony helped put him away until he passed away in prison, thank God. But when you're in prison in Ohio, you can go up to for a thing called parole, and every couple years I had to go to parole board hearings, right? And it was rehashing all those memories. So that trauma, even though he got put away and I knew I was safe, something still scared me. And I just felt like he was going to get me at any time or get out of prison at any time. So I had to go. I had to go and make sure I told my story, because I did not want him out on the streets. If you can literally have sex with a kid, something is wrong with you and you deserve to be locked up. So anyhow, I experiment with alcohol at 12 years old with my brother and sister. Little Kings, they're called. The little mini beers. They're like 4-ounce beers. And I drank 4 or 5 of those, and I just threw up all over the place. I was 12. And then my dad, when he would come into my life, it was very few and far between when he'd actually show up, and when he said he would show up, and he actually did, right? So that was very traumatizing too. Well, when I was 12 years old, he picked me up, and I got to spend the weekend with him. He bought me those down-home punches, the Jack Daniel coolers. I was 12, for fuck's sakes. And he bought me a pack of cigarettes. He said, I know you smoke. What kind do you smoke? And I thought I was in trouble. And he was like, pick up a pack of cigarettes out. And the clerk she didn't even think to ask, are you seriously buying your 12-year-old kid a pack of cigarettes and some alcohol? And I picked the pink ones because I was a little girl. I was 12, and I was like, well, these look good. Oh boy, I threw up all over the place. And I'm really not a drinker today either, but I've done some pretty questionable things on alcohol. I've not made the best judgment calls, right? So I'm 13, 14, experimenting with marijuana, hallucinogenics, 15, and 16, of course, at school. I'm introduced to, my dad leaves for a couple years, and my teacher actually helps me get back in touch with my dad. He tracked down my dad. I don't even know how. I couldn't do it. My dad eluded child support as well. He always got these under-the-table jobs, so he didn't even help my mother. My mom married an amazing man when I was 8 years old, 1988. He's the best man. He's still my stepfather today, thankfully. And he was my father. He is my father. And I love him dearly for doing that. He didn't have to step in and marry a woman and along with her come 3 kids. He didn't have to do that. So my brother and sister were smoking pot and doing hallucinogenics, and my dad comes back into my life at 16. Well, he was a cocaine addict, and he was an addict coming home from Vietnam, heroin. My grandmother grew oriental poppies in her garden, and she plucked them when he came home. So when I was 16, I hung out with my father and started using cocaine with him, with my brother and sister as well. He introduced us to cocaine, our own father. So I'm doing cocaine in school, on the books of school. I'm starting to skip school. You know, I do have attention deficit disorder, and I was put on Ritalin at first, and my grade point average skyrocketed. But I didn't abuse that. I didn't abuse pills until much, much later on in life. So not only was I sexually abused when I was a child, but I felt abandoned by my own father. And then I felt like, well, you know what? It's doing drugs with my dad. It's better to have him here than not. And long story short, he moved away to California. And me and my brother and sister, my brother and sister mainly were strung out. And of course, I found other avenues to get cocaine. My brother and sister did too, And I started dating a drug dealer, very young. And then 17 was like Molly and raves and cocaine. And I even tried meth once back then. It wasn't very prevalent like it is today. And So we'd go to raves and stuff, and I was introduced to crack cocaine, but not freebasing it or freebasing cocaine. It was like rolled up with a marijuana blunt. So we called them primos, right? And we smoked a hell of a lot of primos. And it was like kind of like that stigma was erased because it wasn't a crack pipe, that we weren't even smoking crack. Yes, we were. Me and my friends. I hung out with an older crowd, and just the troubled youth is what I gravitated towards. Because, like I said before, I had this insatiable appetite for more. I can do the most drugs, even more than grown men, right? And I'm only 5'1", and I'm about 125 pounds right now, So we started smoking the crack with the marijuana, and for many years, it was just that, partying. When I was 19, I met my first son's father. That was 7 years of an abusive relationship. He was physically abusive, emotionally, verbally, sexually. It was pretty bad. He was the type of person that you couldn't escape from, that made fun of you in front of his friends. Well, we did cocaine together, a lot of it, copious amounts of cocaine. He ended up selling it, and we had an abundance. And I think I stuck around because there was drugs involved, and he had a lot of pain meds. And back in those days, you can get pain pills like that. Oh, my back hurts. Oh, doctor, my back hurts. They're the best drug dealers in the world back then. They were my first relationship with a pain management doctor. The first damn appointment, he wrote me a prescription for 120 10-milligram Percocets. That's 4 of them a day. That's 40 milligrams of Percocet a day. So long story short about that, I failed the drug test, of course, because I had marijuana in my system. And he was like, sorry. Or it was cocaine. I'm sorry. And he was like, the marijuana I can forgive, Jennifer, but the cocaine, here's your last prescription. So I had to, go through other avenues to get my pain pills, other doctors, whatnot. And so I'm using a copious amount of cocaine with my son's father, and the crack started again, right? And this time, crack pipes are involved, right? And I had enough one day, and he would force me to do sex acts on him while he was watching pornos. And if I wasn't doing it right, he would withhold the drugs from me. It was like a power struggle. And I got sick of it, so I stopped smoking the crack. I was like, I'm done with this shit. And so are you. You're done with this. And I woke up one day, and he was making crack next to me and my son. I kept my son in the bed with me. We had no right having a child together, first of all, because we were so messed up on drugs. I'm so surprised that I kept custody of my son. So I caught him making crack cocaine on the ground next to the bed with a box of baking soda. So I woke up fuming mad, right? Something kind of dawned on me also, like, you need to get your shit together here so you can take care of this kid. So I woke up. He was doing that. I grabbed the box of baking soda, and I flushed it down the toilet. I just dumped it in the toilet. I just dropped it in there. And to him, that meant he had to, it didn't dawn on him that he could just go to the store and get more. No. He beat the brakes off of me. He beat me so bad, there was blood everywhere. A couple months before that happened, my 25th birthday, May 10th, 2005. My son had just turned 2 years old 5 days before that. My 25th birthday, he wakes me up. He wants sex. And I'm like, dude, no, leave me alone. And I would keep Matthew in the bed with me, my son Matthew, because I felt safe, like he wouldn't mess with me. And I wouldn't have to perform these sex acts on him. Well, he took it anyways. And during the struggle, Matthew woke up. It was about 5 a.m. Matthew woke up and tried pulling him off of me. Well, his mother took us to a restaurant for my birthday, and I just sat there stone-faced because I felt like this. If this ever happens to me again, I'm fighting. Because when I was little, you're a little kid, you're 5 years old, and then there's this gigantic adult. You can't very well fight them off now, can you? So I figured in my mind, if this ever happens to me again, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to fight. I'm going to claw their eyeballs out. I'm going to do everything I can to get away. I'm going to bite their wiener off, something like that. I just froze. And when I went to the police department, I was told that it wasn't rape because spousal rape wasn't. Believe it or not, it wasn't a thing back then. So a female detective, nonetheless. She goes, "Can you pass a polygraph?" I'm like, "Give me one right now." And I got so fed up, I just walked out. I felt like nobody would help me. No one would believe me because we had a cycle of breaking up and going back together. You know, he beat me up. I would get manipulated and gaslighted. And he was a narcissist, by the way. And I would go back and forth. And, you know, I kind of just stuck with him for years. Like, we got a house together and we lived together. When he could isolate me, there was no escaping him. He even come up to my jobs and everything else. So I flushed this box of baking soda down the toilet, and he literally beats my ass. I mean, there's blood everywhere. He uppercuts me in the nose. And I don't know if you've ever been punched in the nose before, but it turned on like a faucet. Poosh, everywhere. He told the police and tried to tell me that I headbutted the candle holder. Well, you guys, my candle holders in the bathroom where this all transpired are 6 feet in the air. He had to hang them up. He was almost 6 foot tall. Yeah, he said that. So there's blood everywhere. It looked like a crime scene. Somehow I got away from him. We were struggling. He was choking me, everything. I got away from him, and I grabbed Matthew up, and I put him in the front seat with me in my lap. I didn't even care. I was just trying to get the hell out of there. I drove 2 miles to my parents' house. I got onto the apron of their driveway. I was doing 80 miles an hour. Needless to say, I got there in under like 2 minutes, and typically it takes about 5. Well, I was getting pulled over, and I had no idea. So I step out of the car, and I met with a cop with his gun drawn. "Get in the car!" And I turned around to look at him, and he goes, "Oh, my God. Who the hell did this to you?" And before I can open my mouth, he radioed ahead, like, we need backup. And he said my address, my home address, because there was dealings with the law a lot with me and him, my son's father. And they sent cop cars, and they ended up nabbing him. So during this time, he goes to jail, right? And he comes home on a medical furlough. He leaves the jail, and his aunt brings him to our house that we had bought and shared. And he kicks the front door in. Now, at this time, he's gone. I'm like, "Thank you, Jesus." Do you think I would quit using drugs? No. So I started using more pills and even methamphetamine, right? Or methamphetamines? Is it methamphetamines? Whatever. So I'm snorting meth and then smoking meth because the people that I hang out with are abusing are cooking meth. So of course I was like, "Screw it, let's do this. Sounds like a great idea, right?" Well, 26 years old is when I finally was able to break free from my ex, and he subsequently, I got a restraining order and he broke it. So subsequently he went to prison for beating me up really bad and violating the restraining order. So I see my friend, I'm not going to name his name, but he had done a lot of prison numbers. He had a lot of prison numbers. He was a heroin addict, and we all knew this. And he did all of this time. He came home looking fresh face and everything else, but he went right back to using. And I was like, what is the hype about this stuff? And I have to tell you guys that at 21, I have to back up here a little bit. At 21 years old, my grandmother had passed away. And I had moved out to Vegas for a short time. I was isolated, and that's where my son's father, before I even had my son, had physically assaulted me. And I was shocked. He made me work in a strip club and everything. But there was a moth. So anyhow, sorry, squirreled out there. So anyhow, my grandmother's diagnosed with COPD, and I'm told, "We need you home." So I hopped on a plane. Well, he beat me up again, but I hopped on a plane and come back to Cleveland because my mother bought me 3 plane tickets, and he convinced me to stay. He manipulated me and gaslighted me into staying and guilting me, right? So my grandmother is diagnosed with COPD, and I watch her slowly deteriorate in front of my eyes. And she's getting morphine from hospice. And so I started taking the morphine, right? And I didn't even experience withdrawals. And throughout the years, before my friend from prison came home, I never experienced withdrawals from pills. I could take a bunch of them and be fine. Now, when my friend come home from prison, he came over my house. It was a drug den. It was like a trap house almost, but I kept it really clean. You know, my friend comes home from prison and he's got heroin with him, and I'm like, dude, what's the hype, man? I need to try some of this stuff. And he's like, no, Jen, no. And I'm persistent. When I want something, I'm persistent. And so he caved, and he's like, here, you can snort. And he put this tiny little line out. And I'm like, what? I'm used to rails, bro. I can write my name in rails and do them all. I used to be proud of that. I'm like, what is this? Are you scamming me, bro? And he's like, girl, that's all you need. The rest will kill you. You'll die. So I'm like, oh. Right then and there, I should have said bye and didn't do it, right? But I did. And boy, did I get profusely sick. I threw up all over the place, but it was like a warm hug. The opiate heroin hug, right? And it was a warm hug, and I felt this rush through my whole body like I've never felt before, even with all the Percocets, the morphine, everything. I've never felt something like this before. Love affair, instant marriage. Right then and there, I fell in love. Every other drug, cocaine, meth, whatever, pills, didn't even work anyways. Marijuana, no. Alcohol, nope. I found the love of my life, and that was heroin. So a month into my use, I had some money, so I didn't have to worry about running out, and I ran out because I ran out of money. The money doesn't last long when you're on drugs, especially heroin. People think it's so cheap. There's this common misconception that, well, you go to heroin when you can't afford your pill addiction anymore. That may be true at first, because you can get a $20 bag of heroin, right? But when you're doing it every day, you're building up a thing called tolerance. Your tolerance goes up. Well, when that money ran out, boy, and I was doing about half a gram a day at this point, right? I got so insanely sick. And if you don't know what drug withdrawal is, let me tell you what, especially heroin withdrawal, not cute. You're freezing and you have goosebumps all over you and you're sweating at the next second. It's like hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. Your eyes are watering. You're sneezing 3 times. I don't know why there's a 3 sneeze curse like that, but it is. You get nauseous. I got something in my eye. You get nauseous and you get diarrhea, and it feels like you have the flu, but it's times like a million, and you just feel like you're going to die. And luckily, you don't die from that. But heroin isn't number 1 on the dependency scale for no reason. You become physically addicted to it, not only physically, but mentally as well. When you run out of heroin and you're a heroin addict, you're panicking. What am I going to do to get my next high? When I ran out of that money, I started stealing from my parents and from stores and stuff like that. Well, I would drive people around to steal from stores. I didn't have the balls to do that. I got caught stealing when I was 12 years old, and that right there, I was like, well, F this. I'm never doing that again. So I would drive people around to steal. We've done some low life stuff for our drugs too. There was downspouts we've ripped off of churches, copper wire. When my house caught fire, I even let my friend strip the house of copper wire. Like, there's nothing that you won't do for those drugs. And I have said this in my videos before, especially in my sober video. I admitted that I had to sleep with men for money to get my drugs, to make sure I didn't get sick. Because when you introduce a drug that's so physically dependent, that you're so physically dependent on, you will do anything for it. You know? If I didn't sleep with men for money, I would steal from my mother. Cash, gift cards, her jewelry, All of the jewelry that I had was long gone. I pawned it all. I pawned an 18 karat gold Italian rope bracelet that I've had since I was a baby. It was from Italy. It was an heirloom. My great grandmother had it for, God, 80 years. It's gone. I don't know if I could ever get it back. I doubt it. It's probably melted down by now. That was so many years ago. It was 2007 maybe. So I would steal my mother's jewelry, and I would only pawn it. I wouldn't sell it because I had I had a month to go get this jewelry back, right? So I figured in my mind I would just use the disability checks that I was getting, and I would get her jewelry out, but it never happened that way. She found out right away. My mother is very meticulous with what she has. And, did you steal my jewelry? Where is it? And I'm like, no, maybe you misplaced it. And I'm like, does she really believe that? Hell no, she didn't believe that. So I would have to tell her where it is. And she would make me go to the pawn shop with her and go get it because the tickets were always in my name. My mother was an enabler, though. She could have called the police on me, and that would have been it. I probably, would have done some time for stealing as much as I had from her. And this was a cycle, and this went on for years. Wherever she would hide her jewelry, I'd find it. Only when I went to prison did she finally got a safe with a combination and a key, right? I'm pleased to tell you today that since becoming sober November 1st, 2014, it'll be 7 years this November. And guess what? I have the keys to that safe. I have the combination, and my mother trusts me again. But that'll be later down the road. That'll be in another series, right? Because I'm going to break this up into series. So that's what I basically did for my drugs. And I was going to share this in another video, but we'll touch more on this in another video. But I wanted to just show you the progression of what my drug use was, right? From the time when I was 4 to sipping foam off a beer and even more and more to the marijuana hallucinogenics, ecstasy, cocaine, meth, pills, abundance of pills, and then inevitably heroin. And when I did my heroin for that, I think after the first, I'd say 2 months, snorting it just wasn't doing it anymore. I didn't smoke it because I didn't know how, and I didn't want to waste it. So what was the next best thing to do? Inject it. And if I tell you guys how disgusting my addiction, when I was really deep into it, I had abscesses all over me. And abscesses are staph infection, and they can pop up anywhere from dirty needles, right? They can pop up anywhere on your body. I had abscesses that were gnarly and big, and even when I was in jail, right? One had popped, and I went to I asked to go. Because I was arrested on a warrant, I asked to go to medical. I'm like, I really need to get this thing checked out. It was a massive, massive, massive abscess on my hip. And that jail elastic band kept rubbing up against it. And I seen that there was a head. Well, she sent me back to my cell, and this thing exploded. And it was like dark purple shimmer. So I'm like, oh, look, I have unicorn blood. No, dummy, that was infection. So luckily I got bonded out of jail, and I was getting sick. So if you don't have that drug, within 12 hours, you're getting very, very sick. And when you're injecting it, you're going intravenously. So instead of going through the mucous membrane of your nose, it hits you a lot quicker, the IV drug use, right? So it hits you a lot quicker, but it also leaves your system a lot faster too. So you become extremely sick, especially if you're doing it every day. And heroin is a drug that you cannot not use every day. So that about does it for this installment. I just wanted to let you guys know what the progression was. And 2 months after snorting that first line of heroin, I was shooting up every day. My habit got to be $300 a day. And I've given drug dealers well over $600,000. I was addicted to heroin for 8 years, from the time I was 26 years old to the time I was 34. One day I just said, I'm done. And we'll get into that in another video. If you or anyone you know is suffering with drug addiction, please share this with them. And know this, and so many people message me, and I appreciate it. I really do. I love you all, and I appreciate that. So many people reach out to me begging for me to help their loved ones, or what could they do to help their loved ones. And I'm going to tell you this right now. There's nothing you can do until that addict that you love is ready to make that decision to quit. There's nothing you can do. What you can do, stop enabling them. Don't give them money, and tell them it's either you and me relationship or those drugs. Cut yourself out of their lives, and hopefully they will see what they've lost. Because for the longest time, I didn't see the consequences. I thought I was only hurting myself. So if you're suffering, please just comment on here, or you can message me on Just Jen Reacts on Facebook. I have a lot of connections, so I could probably get you into treatment, or I can lead you to the right direction on where to go and what to do. But you have to stop and look at yourself and look at everything that you've lost and all of the consequences that you have, and stop thinking that you're only hurting yourself. And you have to make that decision to quit and be done. All right, you guys, this is the first video, the first installment of my addiction story. I hope somebody gets help from this. This is not the end of this series. I'm going to be continuing on. The next installment will be, what did I lose? What did my drug addiction cost me? Besides integrity, dignity, self-respect, my trust, I lost everybody's trust. And it took years of being honest and making amends to gain that back and proving myself. All right, you guys. Seriously, if you know somebody who needs help, please show them this video. Please share it with them. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, tap that notification bell, and make sure you're notified when I'm live or I drop a new video. That's how you get notified. And know this, my 7 years will come and my 7 years will go. But I know this much. I've been through the ringer, and nothing will ever bring me back there. All right, you guys. I'm Just Jen.